You are listening to the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network. And now your host, Caleb Turner.
It is Saturday, May 18th, 2013. This is the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network, the 23rd edition of this talk show on this radio network. We got a great show planned for you today. The NBA semifinals are all wrapped up and ready and set to go, beginning tomorrow with Game 1, Memphis, San Antonio, and of course Indiana just knocked off the New York Knicks. Indiana and Miami get set on Wednesday. We'll talk about that. And of course, the NHL, LA and San Jose, Game 3 in process right now. 1-1 the score through 2. LA has a 2-0 series lead on San Jose. Then we'll touch on Detroit's shocking win today in Chicago to tie the series at 1. Great show planned for you today. Sit tight and enjoy the ride. The Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Network rolls on after this.
The Memphis Grizzlies head to San Antonio for Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals from San Antonio, Texas, tomorrow at 3:30, and coverage begins right here on the Anchor Radio Network at 12. And that is 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific, and 12 o'clock Pacific. The pregame show begins right here on the Anchor Radio Network. This is the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network. And now your host, Caleb Turner.
It's 8:30, Caleb Turner Talk Show, May 18th, 2013. We are live from our downtown Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada studios here in downtown Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, on a partly cloudy, partly sunny Saturday evening here as we push towards the end of May, as we have crossed the midway point in May. Many sports news throughout this past week, a lot to talk about. I mean, it's bulging at the seams of sports conversations that we can have, debates, talking about certain players, teams, many things. General managers, coaches. We had the Vancouver Whitecaps squander a 2-1 lead late in the second half today. Of course, Portland scored on a not-so-very good call by the refs. Should have been a handball. On a not so very good non-call by the refs, as clearly on the replay, it was a handball, but Portland scored, tied the game. Fans weren't happy. I wasn't happy at home. And the Whitecaps lose out on 2 points that they could have had. Could have been back-to-back wins. It would have been 6 points in 2 weeks for the Whitecaps. Would have been big standings-wise. I mean, the point's pretty big too right now, but every point counts in this position of the season, even though it's early. The Caps and the Montreal Impact will play in the final leg of the Amway Canadian Championship final on Wednesday, and that'll be here at BC Place, and the Caps are going to have to beat Montreal in order to win, because of away goals on aggregate. If it ends 1-1, Montreal would win on aggregate because of away goals, because the first leg was 0-0, and I'm sure they're going to pull out all the stops to try to win this game. And I'm sure everybody's going to be in the lineup. It should be a pretty good spirited atmosphere. And another team that's run around here is the Seattle Mariners, and they had a pretty decent week. They've lost back-to-back games. But before the back-to-back losses, they did pretty good against the Yankees, won 2 out of 3. And at one point were, 7-4, 8-4 in their last 12 games. Now I think they're 8-6 and 14. But I tell you, I mean, the Mariners are trotting right along. They were down 4-0 going to the 7th inning. And they tied the game in the 9th, 4-4. They lost on a fielder's choice. But Raul Ibanez and Justin Smoke hitting back-to-back home runs to tie it in the 9th inning. I'll tell you, Raul Ibanez's bat is heating up. A couple home runs against the Yankees. Grand slam, no less. And, he's moving right along. Felix Hernandez, 1.53 ERA, leads the majors. And Seager with 21 RBIs and Michael Morse with 10 jacks. Just 2 back of the AL lead and 4 back of the MLB lead. But we aren't talking about the MLB necessarily right now. We might touch on that towards the end of the broadcast. A couple of topics that we'll talk about potentially towards the end of the broadcast. But we're going to start with the NBA. Little something different because the Canucks aren't in the playoffs. Obviously, we talked about that last week on the 11th. But because of the Canucks not being in the playoffs, there really isn't much to talk about in the NHL except for what's going on. But to us Canucks fans, it's not that big of a deal. What the big deal is right now is Switzerland and Switzerland and Sweden, and the gold medal game in which the Sedin Twins will be playing in. So, the Sedins today in the semifinals against Finland with 5 points combined. A goal and 2 assists from Hank and 2 assists from Danny. They played pretty good with Louis Eriksson. I think Mike Gillis needs to open his eyes. Maybe Louis Eriksson needs to come to Vancouver. And maybe Alex Burrows needs to go bye-bye. I'm not trying to insinuate anything. I'm just saying what I'm thinking. Tonight, the Indiana Pacers could wrap up their series, the Eastern Conference semifinal against the New York Knicks. And it was kind of an up-and-down game. Indiana jumped out to a big lead. The Knicks clawed their way back and actually had a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter, thanks to Carmelo Anthony's 39 points on the game. But the Indiana Pacers would prevail by 6 points. Is it 5 points? Nevertheless, Indiana is into the Eastern Conference final and will play Miami beginning on Wednesday night, Game 1. They get 4 days off. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, technically, 3 days off. But for Indiana, if you combine everything, for Miami, they've had a week and a half off. They will have had a week and a half off when they play. A week off when they play that game on Wednesday. Tomorrow, the Game 1 of the Western Conference final begins. Memphis and San Antonio. By the way, we are going to go in depth with these series, but just for now, we're just giving you a brief synopsis of what happened. Memphis and San Antonio will play. That's going to be, I think, the more entertaining series. Now, Indiana is definitely a heavily favored underdog. Heavily favored underdog in that series against Miami. And I think the Memphis-San Antonio series is very, very evenly matched. Memphis put in a beatdown on OKC without Russell Westbrook to let everybody know that Westbrook was not in the lineup. Everybody obviously knows that because OKC, I don't think, is out of the playoffs without Westbrook. I think if Westbrook is in the lineup, I think OKC probably wins that series in 5. And they probably beat San Antonio in 6. It's just what I'm saying. Memphis and San Antonio, like I said, Memphis beat OKC 4-1. They honestly manhandled them. And just to slap it in OKC's face, they beat them on home court in Game 5. Now, I know Kevin Durant is going to have a great career. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the best players. He's top 3, top 4 players right now in the NBA. And right now, right now in the playoffs. Just, 2 or 3 days ago when they were still in the playoffs. He was top 3 left. You think LeBron and probably Melo and Durant probably right there. And I know Paul George is going to get some props now. And, Tim Duncan maybe, but just not enough. He's a big man. I'm talking superstars. And I know Tim Duncan is a superstar, but for all intents and purposes, LeBron is 10 times better than Duncan, probably 5 times better than Durant, and probably 3 times better than Melo, if we're going to get technical. But for Kevin Durant, I know he didn't have his buddy Westbrook on the team, but he is in a era in which LeBron James is going to dominate for the next 5-6 years, barring any life-threatening injuries. There's no two ways about it. Kevin Durant is going to grow up as an NBA player in this LeBron James the King era. No two ways about it. Durant, if he can't win without Westbrook, let me rephrase this. If he can't win the championship with Russell Westbrook, he's not going to win it without Russell Westbrook. There's no two ways about it. Durant is not the kind of player that a team, well, Durant's not a guy who can actually carry a team. Look at who Oklahoma City has. Serge Ibaka. Kendrick Perkins. Thabo Sefolosha. Russell Westbrook. Okay, so you take Russell Westbrook out of that lineup. You would expect Kevin Durant to have to carry the big load, but Durant was nothing in that series against Memphis. Yeah, Oklahoma City won game 1, Memphis won 4 straight. I mean, come on. I mean, they're good. The Grizzlies right now, in my eyes, I think they can beat Miami. With everything that Memphis has put forward onto the table, they beat an Oklahoma City Thunder team that obviously didn't have their second best player in the lineup, and probably a player who is probably in the top 10 in the NBA in Russell Westbrook. I think he is in the top 10. So, and that top 3 player of Kevin Durant was nothing. He disappeared in that series. So, Memphis beat a team that was pretty much down and out. But they beat him. And they beat him 4-1, and they beat him 2 times in Oklahoma City. Pretty good. Pretty good indeed. San Antonio beats Golden State 4-2. Now, Golden State, I was really, really pulling for Golden State. Just because of the heavily favored underdog, 6th seed, to beat the number 3 seed Denver Nuggets was, pretty big. Denver had a good team. George Karl had led that team with Ty Lawson and Andre Iguodala and whoever else Denver had. That's kind of funny. And they had a couple other good players, but Golden State, Steph Curry, what a future this guy has. Klay Thompson, what a future this guy has. Andrew Bogut has still got quite a bit of years left in his career. Golden State's got tons of players that if they all come back next year, boy, I'll tell you, if they can get some of these players, in at least maybe 3 or 4 of them locked up long-term, look out. Golden State is going to be a team that is going to be up for Western Conference Final multiple years. I didn't really talk about the Memphis Grizzlies, but Zebo and the big white dude, Marcus Saul. Trying to think, who else does Memphis have? I know who they have. They have Tayshaun Prince too, but I don't know. All the names of Memphis slip my mind right now. Tony Allen, yeah, that's right. Tony Allen, Quincy Pondexter, who was kind of under radar in the series against Oklahoma City, but he was quite the force against the Clippers. But anyways, back to San Antonio and Golden State. San Antonio just too much experience, too much playoff experience, too much veteran leadership, too much take the bull by the horns and sit on the bull of Golden State. And they just finished them off in Game 6, and they credit the fans in Golden State. A lot of them stuck around and gave the young rookies standing ovation, and I just thought that was well-deserved. Because Golden State, let's face it, Golden State gave that city there, Oakland, gave that city there in the Oakland area a unbelievable run. Even though it stopped in the second round, they still gave them an unbelievable run. It's just the way it was. It was incredible. 2-2 going to Game 5. So, they beat Denver on home court. They had a chance to force a Game 7 on home court, but it was a good series for Golden State. Miami versus Chicago. This was a close series in the beginning. Chicago won Game 1, and I think everybody was a little bit shocked, but Miami quieted all that with 4 straight wins. Not much to talk about in that series except for the physicality in the first couple games. And, of course, Derrick Rose, still not in the lineup for the Chicago Bulls. Another season in which he does not play. And he cashed in on pretty much $17 million this year he made for not playing one game. And I'm not going to talk about it because it's been pushed into the water and buried in the sea by tons of sports broadcasters and talk show hosts, so I'm not really going to talk about it. Just the fact that I think the Bulls need to part ways with Derrick Rose. That's all I'm going to say. It's just a big waste. Indiana over the Knicks, we already talked about that. So Indiana and Miami. What a Eastern Conference final. Indiana has got David West, Paul George, George Hill, Stevenson, Tashawn Stevenson. Some pretty good names there. Good players. Tyler Hansborough is also on the lineup. For Indiana, they really didn't have that difficult of a ride here. They beat a Hawks team that could have been beat in 4. And they beat a Knicks team that, 6 games was pretty legitimate for them. Melo didn't really play world class until tonight when he needed to, but it just wasn't enough because his team couldn't play squat. And of course, J.R. Smith was a disappearing act throughout the playoffs. Ever since he threw the elbow on Jason Terry back in the Boston series, he was just not there. He didn't show up for any of the games, and Tyson Chandler wasn't the force that he could have been, and of course, Keyshawn Martin. Anyways. The Miami Heat, I cannot see them losing this series for some reason, but I think it's going to take 7 games. I think Indiana is going to push this to the limit. I could see Indiana getting a split to start, and everybody like, whoa, they won a game in Miami. I can see another split in Indiana, and then Miami winning Game 5, Indiana winning Game 6, and Miami winning Game 7. Manhandling them in Game 7, by the way. Memphis, San Antonio, I'm going to pick Memphis in 6. I think San Antonio is going to run out of gas. And I know everybody said San Antonio was going to run out of gas against Golden State. They said that it was going to be tough against the Lakers. Well, it wasn't tough against my Lakers, but it was a little bit tougher against the Golden State Warriors, and I think they're just going to run into an absolutely incredible team right now who are on a emotional and momental high in the Memphis Grizzlies, and I cannot see Memphis losing this series. Memphis wins in 6, and that sets up the M&M, Miami and Memphis. What a series that will be. And I think it's kind of hard to not see Memphis and Miami, but let's say San Antonio beats Memphis in however many games it takes them. San Antonio and probably Miami. I just can't see Miami not making the NBA Finals. Miami and San Antonio. Wow. A young, well, not fully young, but younger and more fearless and just fast and blow your mind away Miami Heat team against a old, methodical, veteran-style led, fundamental team. I still would not see Miami losing. I think in Miami, Memphis, there's a greater chance that Memphis can beat Miami, but we literally saw a Miami team, and we're seeing a Miami team game in and game out who can literally flip a switch and play world class. Like literally, flip a switch, and they're up by 12, and you just blinked your eyes. Each game, a different player shows up, and usually LeBron shows up every game. Didn't really show up much in Game 1, but, I mean, in Game 2, 3, 4, 5, he just was world class, and then you got all the other players, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, Mike Miller, Mario Chalmers. You got your big guys down low with Birdman. Birdman's come out of nowhere. Chris Anderson. I mean, wow. Norris Cole, who can put it in there. Juwan Howard, who can, play a couple minutes here and there. Udonis Haslem obviously plays before Howard, but, even Joel Anthony. I mean, what a lineup Miami has. Rashard Lewis, if you really need it. That's basically their whole team. It's going to be kind of hard to see Miami lose. But that's just my opinion. When we come back, we'll get into the NHL Western Conference, LA, San Jose, Chicago, Detroit. In the East, Pittsburgh and Ottawa. And that's a pretty entertaining series. I mean, you look at what Pittsburgh has done. Natural hat trick for Sidney Crosby. You got the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers who play tomorrow. Series is 1-0 Boston. But Sidney Crosby just, man, when he's in the lineup, it's just wow. I mean, he just wows everybody with how he plays, and even when he gets the lucky bounces, it's just, that's how good he really is. Lucky bounces prove how good of a player you really are. When we come back to the NHL playoffs round 2, stay right here at the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network.
Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA begins Wednesday night at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Indiana and Miami, live from Miami, Florida. You can hear the full play-by-play right here on the Anchor Radio Network coverage beginning at 4:30. That is the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, live from Miami.
We're back live at the Caleb Turner Talk Show, Anchor Radio Network, May 18th, 2013, baby. Wow. It's amazing how fast this year has gone and how fast the first 23 editions of the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network have gone by. Moving into segment number 2 with Bob. He is handing me is this white chocolate? Greek yogurt. Tastes like strawberries. Wow. I think this is a Greek yogurt covering a strawberry. Wow. Fantastically done. And Bob, wow. He just earned brownie points, or should I say, strawberry covered with Greek yogurt points. Wow, that was fantastic. Man, you got any more of those? We'll have to have a couple more of those later. Anyways, moving into segment number 2. Dos on the Caleb Turner Talk Show, Anchor Radio Network. The NHL. And maybe a little bit of IIHF, but I don't think so. I'm a little ticked off that Canada couldn't even get to the semis. For the 6th straight year, we aren't even going to get a medal. Huh? 6th straight year? Come on. You got to get something. Literally, since the Olympics here in Vancouver, Canada's done nothing overseas. And even here, I don't know, they got a lot to prove in 2014 Sochi. Like a lot to prove. The Los Angeles Kings look like they're going to repeat. At least, repeat going to the Stanley Cup Final. I don't know about repeat winning the Cup. It's going to be tough to beat Pittsburgh, but I know a lot of people are going to argue Boston. I'm not a Bruins. I hate the Bruins. Let's just say it how it is. I hate the Bruins. But you got to respect that, they're going to probably get back to the Eastern Conference Final. I mean, I'm pulling for the Rangers. I'm not much of a New York fan. I'm not much of a Boston fan. I'm a Mariners fan, man. I cheer for anything in the Northwest. Anything outside of Northwest, it's got to be a player on the team that I like. Like Kobe Bryant on the Lakers. The Lakers aren't in the Northwest, but I like Kobe Bryant. I like a Golden State. I like Steph Curry. He's good. Now, I kind of just started liking him in the playoffs, so I'm kind of a bandwagon Golden State Warriors fan, but either way. But I hate Boston, and I hope Boston somehow finds a way to lose, because they somehow find a way to win. They had no business beating Toronto in that 7th game. And I'm not really wanting to talk about it, even though it was this past week, but one of the biggest meltdowns, it is. It's the biggest meltdown, biggest third period meltdown, or biggest third period comeback. I'm going to go with the meltdown, because Boston had no business winning that game. The referees didn't really have a factor in that game. There was one call that I think could have been made that wasn't. late in the third, well, midway through the third, sometime in the third period, a call could have been made against Boston, and it wasn't. But that's not their fault. That's not Toronto's fault. That's not the ref's fault either. I mean, come on. Toronto literally took their foot off the gas pedal and stopped playing hockey. Not a good thing to do against 2 years removed from winning the Stanley Cup Boston Bruins. And pretty much everybody on that team was at the Stanley Cup Final 2 years ago. Including the Mr. Punch in your face, Brad Marchand, who I wish I could punch in the face. Or maybe somebody else from any other team needs to punch Brad Marchand in the face. He's got a face that only a mommy can love. And he's got an attitude that only a mommy could love. The only player on Boston that I'm actually partially like, barely like is the big word, but Milan Lucic, come on. Vancouver native, played for the Vancouver Giants, took him to a Memorial Cup. Can't even get out of my mouth. Won the Memorial Cup right here in Vancouver. So, there's a part of me that still likes Milan Lucic, but I kind of hate him because, they beat the Canucks in the Stanley Cup Final 2 years. I hate anybody who beat the Canucks 2 years ago in the Stanley Cup Final. But there's a part of me that kind of is open to Milan Lucic. That's just me. Pittsburgh and Ottawa. Penguins take both games at the Consol Energy Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. No shock. To be honest, it wasn't much of a shock. I mean, Ottawa had a chance to win Game 2. Threw it away. Pittsburgh stopped playing in the third period. It's like Boston and Toronto all over again. Pittsburgh was Toronto and stopped playing. And Ottawa did not want to be like Boston and smoke them. And it's unfortunate, but Ottawa's down 2-0. And it looks like another year where the Canadian team is not going to win a Stanley Cup. It's unfortunate. I mean, we had 4 teams in the playoffs. Only one team makes it out of the first round. That's pretty embarrassing. Especially when, Vancouver got swept and Toronto blew a third period lead. And then, of course, Ottawa played Montreal, so there was only one Canadian team that was going to make out of that. So we had a maximum of 3 Canadian teams making it out of the first round, but only one made it out, and that was the one that was expected to make it out. Well, not really expected to make it out, but there was the one Canadian team that was guaranteed to get in to the second round was in that series, and that's pretty sad. I'm still a little ticked off about Vancouver getting swept, but I'm kind of slowly but surely getting over it. Because for some reason that's just the way that the Canucks have played in the last little while. Just not good in the playoffs. And what's even more frustrating is seeing the Sedins lighting it up overseas at the IIHF World Championships and getting 5 points combined today. That was pretty upsetting. But anyways, I'm starting to get off topic here with the NHL. The other Western Conference series, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit with a huge... I can't describe to you how big of a win today was for Detroit. No words can describe how big it is to go into the Madhouse on Madison, beat the best team in the league 4-1. 4-1 nonetheless on home ice and steal a huge game. They're going home, tied 1-1 in the series. Doesn't mean Chicago is going to lose in Detroit. I'm just saying it's big to get a split in Chicago in front of those crazy fans and in front of where Chicago tends to play pretty good hockey. And they just did not have it going today. I mean, what do they have, like 20 shots on net? Just Detroit killed them. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but all Detroit really needed was a little bit extra rest from that long series against, who'd they play? Anaheim, yeah, against Anaheim. In the 7-game series, they played one night later. Only had 1 day off rest, and they just need a little bit of rest to get back into shape for the series against Chicago. They didn't play very well in the first game, but they played really good in the second game, and they gave themselves a chance going back to the Joe. Tied 1-1 in the series. I like the way Henrik Zetterberg's played. I'm not a Detroit fan. In fact, I really hate Detroit because they're pretty big rivals with Vancouver. They always have a good They always have a good game, but you gotta recognize players that play pretty fantastic. Detroit's the only team that I hate that I'm actually going to recognize players on. I hate Chicago, and I hate Boston, and I hate LA. But out of those teams, the only team that I'm really going to recognize players on is Detroit, because you can respect Detroit with the way that they play. The only guy in Detroit that I really just, I wish he wasn't with Detroit. I wish he wasn't in the NHL, is Jordan Tootoo. But other than that, everybody in Detroit's pretty good. I'm not going to start saying, I like this guy, but you got to recognize Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk, pretty incredible players, and Henrik Zetterberg has really stepped it up a notch in the playoffs, especially against Anaheim, and playing pretty good against Chicago as well in these first two games. But I think the best is yet to come for Detroit. Beating Chicago on home ice is pretty big, especially when you beat them 4-1, but I think it only gets better for Detroit going forward. The gold medal game for the IIHF World Championship is tomorrow, Switzerland and Sweden. Switzerland is 9-0. Is that the biggest shock in the IIHF? I think it's a bigger shock that Switzerland's 9-0 than Canada not being in a medal game. It definitely is a bigger shock. So Sweden's going to have to do something that no team's done yet this year, and that is beat Switzerland. Now Sweden will be on home ice, and that is big. And Sweden has not played Switzerland with the Sedin twins, so that's another thing. And by the way, Alex Edler was suspended for the rest of the tournament with that knee-on-knee collision on Eric Stahl. And, I'm a little bit shocked that this dirty streak in Edler, he got suspended earlier this year for running into the, who was it that he ran into? He ran into somebody. The Phoenix goalie. Yeah, that's right, Mike Smith. And, I didn't think that was a suspendable play, but he did get suspended a couple games, for that play on Smith, but gets suspended for the rest of the tournament with a knee-on-knee hit on Eric Stahl, who will not have to have surgery, which is a good thing, because we never want to see a good Canadian hockey player go down unless he's like Brad Marchand or something like that. Then we're okay if he gets hurt and is out long-term or something like that, but it's a third-degree MCL sprain, and it looks like Eric Stahl should be okay. It was pretty freaky. It's sad seeing a Canuck get suspended like that in that kind of a stage, especially seeing how he could have played in the gold medal game. I think he will still get a gold medal, though, if Sweden wins. I think he'll still get a silver medal, even if they lose. I think that's because he did actually play, so I don't think he's suspended from getting a medal. I think he's just suspended from playing. We'll have to confirm that at some point. But anyways, that wraps up this segment. We got one more segment of just random sports topics from this past week. A little bit of tennis, possibly some basketball, high school or college basketball, and maybe a little bit of the horse racing from today. Possibly some MLB as well. But we'll get into that next. You got it right here. Last segment coming up, the Kelton Turner Talk Show, May 18th, 2013 edition, right here on the Anchor Radio Network.
Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinal can be heard right here on the Anchor Network. That is the NHL's Eastern Conference semifinal game. Number 2, New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins from the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, right here on the Anchor Network tomorrow. And coverage will begin at 10 o'clock of that game. Play-by-play right here on the Anchor Radio Network.
We're back live at the Kelton Turner Talk Show, Anchor Radio Network. Last segment of today's broadcast, May 18th, 2013. Couple topics that we're going to get into. Just a couple of random sports stuff. You got that Greek yogurt thing? Can I have one? Thanks. Just a small one. That's just good. Greek yogurt is a little... It's not like sweet, but the strawberry gives it like this tangy, sweet flavor. And it's just this sudden burst of incredible flavor. And you can get those at Costco in the U.S. I don't think they sell them here in Canada. It's only like something that an American store would have. Good food. That's a funny thing. Go to the States, they got the good food down there. There may be a lot of fat people in the U.S., but it's good food. Who cares if you're fat? Just in moderation. As long as you're not being a glutton, it's okay to eat a lot of food, especially down in the States. And for Canadians, you know what? Go splurge once in a while down in the U.S. It's no big deal. Anyways, Preakness Stakes was today in Maryland, and heavily favored Orb. I mean, like, heavily favored. 80%, 4-5 that he was supposed to win this thing. A lot of people lost a lot of money, and there was probably several people that made a significant amount of money if they bet on Oxbow, who won. He was 15-1. That means if you put down $100, you made $1,500 on Oxbow. You do the math. You do the math. Put down $1,000. You made $15,000 on Oxbow. You put down $10,000. You made 150 G. Let's just say if you put down a good amount of money on Oxbow, you became rich quick. Just on a horse. It's pretty amazing, the horse racing people and everything like that, but Oxbow finishes first and Orb finishes fourth. There will not be a Triple Crown winner for yet another year of horse racing. Too bad, so sad. Coach K is considering returning to Team USA at the 2016 Summer Olympics. Hey, nice. And that's if he's still alive. Couldn't help but say that, but anyways. I love Coach K, except that he's a Catholic, but other than that, and that he's a Duke coach. That means I don't like Coach K. Hey, everybody just figured that one out. No, he's a good coach. Like, the best coach probably all time. One of the best coaches all time. Okay, John Wooden's pretty good. Bobby Knight. Coach K. He's a good coach. I like him as a coach. Not as a person. Sometimes not as a coach, but obviously not for what he is religiously. But anyways, we're not about religion. We're about a relationship, and he believes in religion. So, well, I believe in religion too, but if we're going to get technical, religion's not going to get you to heaven, and he believes religion's going to get him to heaven and what he does with that religion. But we're not a religious talk show. We do express our views, though, in a biblical sense from a fundamental independent Baptist point of view. But anyways, good for Coach K considering returning for Team USA. Let's just say he's going to have a lot of good players then. Like, a lot. You thought this year's Summer Olympic team was good. Just wait till 2016. The Rome final in tennis, which is one of the last events before the French Open. Championship games are tomorrow. Championship matches are tomorrow. Federer and Nadal. Another chapter in that incredible matchup. Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock our time. And Serena Williams, world number 1, taking on world number 3, Victoria Azarenka. And Serena Williams is on an absolute domination. Just this year, I think she's won like 4 or 5 tournaments, 5, 6, going for a 6th, I think. And she's world number 1 for a reason. And I mean, I think she's top 3 all-time women in tennis. It's no doubt about it. But it's setting up for a good final for you tennis fanatics out there for tomorrow. In the MLB, the Seattle Mariners, 8 games back of their division. They were right there they were actually second place in their division just 2 games ago. And were they 7 back, 6.5 back from Texas, but 4 games back of the wild card. That's probably all they're going to be able to get this year. Unless Texas has a huge collapse collapse. And Oakland just plays consistent. Seattle's going to have to step it up a little bit, but Felix Hernandez with the major's best 1.53 ERA, and he just continues to dominate with what he has been given. That wraps it up for today's broadcast, May 18th, 2013, Saturday night edition. And hope you have a good weekend. The sports, a pretty good weekend there. You got game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, Memphis and San Antonio. Game 2, Boston and New York. Is Pittsburgh Ottawa playing tomorrow? Unsure of that. We'll have to check that one out. But both Western Conference series played today. Yeah, I think both these play tomorrow, if I'm correct. And of course, you got round 4 of the Byron Nelson Championship there in golf. And of course, Federer Nadal, Serena Williams, and Victoria Azarenka. And then all of your weekend baseball games wrapping up the series from Friday and or from Thursday in 4-game sets. So have a good weekend. Enjoy the sports. Stay safe. Victoria Day weekend here in Canada. And a lot of people taking off. Next week will be Memorial Day in the States, and everybody will be taking off and coming up here. Everybody's down in the States, though, right now. Canadians go down to the States for their holidays and take advantage of all their stuff. And then, of course, all the Americans will come up here and not take advantage of all of our stuff because, well, we charge a lot of money. But they'll take advantage of all the beautiful sites that we have up here in BC. I think it's the most beautiful province in Canada, no doubt about it. You got it right here on the Caleb Turner Talk Show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Caleb Turner Talk Show and the Anchor Radio Network.
You have been listening to a presentation of the Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network. Tune in every week for a new Caleb Turner Talk Show on the Anchor Radio Network.